So we are talking about open source, and we touched on consuming open source. How is the BBC doing with participating in open source projects?
Yeah, so I'd say that's been one of our bigger challenges outside of R&D. So as R&D have always been good at collaborating with the industry. Um, and yeah, consuming open source has always been encouraged um, and done quite well, I think. Uh, Open sourcing BBC software has always been at least possible, sometimes strategically, like TAL, but quite often other open source projects will be spun out because the local engineering leadership believes in it, and it's something we've always had a process for. So we do. So yeah, open sourcing BBC code has always been fairly relatively straightforward, as well as consuming. But yeah, actually contributing to other people's open source, those components that we depend on, that we build on top of, that's been a slightly sticky point. And I guess I didn't go into details of my job roles over my 11 years at the BBC, but for the last couple of years, I kind of stepped away from line management, and I'm now a principal engineer to enable open source and inner source more broadly, almost like an internal consultant role, you could think of it as. And one of the big things I've been working on is skilling up in a lot of these open source and intellectual property concerns, and working with legal to have a process where we can contribute upstream. So yeah, within the connected TV teams, we identified one of our dependencies that was really critical. So it was one of our playback modules. You know, if you're building a video on demand service, you need to make sure that your playback works properly, especially when you've got all these disparate TVs that it needs to work on as well. So yeah, we identified this as something we really wanted to contribute to make our lives easier at the end of the day. We have a fork which is expensive to maintain, so we wanted to contribute back to mainline, um, narrow that diff between our fork and mainline, so that we can more easily take updates of Dash.js going forwards. And yeah, we have a process now. We understand what legal need to be comfortable in signing off open source contributions. I have a better understanding of licensing and CLAs and patents as well, and how that can play into it sometimes. So yeah, I guess I've got to be grateful that this role has been invested in, and this time has been invested in, so that we can now do it. A lot of the time in the past, people would make contributions in their evenings on their own time because people care about their work, and that's kind of great from one side of things, but also if it's benefiting us, if it's you know our dependencies that we rely on, we should be investing in them by contributing back. And yeah, we have a process for that now, but it was quite a long road to get there.
It almost sounds like you are a one person OSPO within BBC now.
A little bit, yeah. It can it can be like that. Obviously, I get loads of support from other advocates and management across the different teams. But yeah, I'm the only person that's kind of full time focused on open source.
Yeah, but I mean, being able to disseminate that knowledge as to how the process now exists and how you can go about doing something for such a contribution, that also takes time and effort, right? The entire communications plan. I mean, the Slack
Yeah,
channels are great. The problem is that the people on the Slack channels already know this stuff because they've been engaged. So it's getting everybody else in the company informed that's often tougher.
Yeah, so we're still relatively early on with this process. We're only talking a handful of projects and a handful of pull requests, and every single one of those has been a kind of just me working with the teams to go through the process. Um, but every time we've gone through to get approval for upstream contributions, there's been a slight difference. So it might be something like understanding how the Apache CLA is different to the Google CLA, understanding how the Apache license is different from the BSD license, um, different you know, different contribution guidelines from different projects. All these sorts of things have meant that it's been great for my learning to see these different things, but it means that the process has continually evolved, and as you say, Phil, that process needs to be communicated and scaled beyond just ask in the open source Slack channel and Tom will help you, which is what it is right now. But something more scalable is one of the things we're looking to get to over the next few months.
So you're kind of in the enablement phase, so to say, that production kind of realized, I assume, that it is valuable to work upstream for the projects that are dependencies. And now that you have a process that is a step towards enabling them to do it. Is that a correct recap?
Yeah, I think most of the engineering leadership recognizes that we are very dependent on these open source projects, and some companies will invest money rather than contributions. Some companies will invest both. Um, Maybe we'll be able to do both in the future, but being publicly funded and everything, it can be tricky to release funds for something like that. So contributing code is a way of ensuring that our dependencies remain secure and maintained and fit for purpose. It's an investment in the thing that you are dependent on, and I think most engineers kind of get that now. There is also the reputational side of things. I think tech companies are expected to contribute back. I think ideally with money and code, but if you can't do both, at least do one of those things. We've also got, I think, a public responsibility to give back to the communities that enable us to build our software.